Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Svarim Chatter podcast. On this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be joined by David Arnovitz, who is the editor-in-chief of the Koren Tanakh of the Land of Israel, which is, currently they just published their second volume. The first volume was on Shemais, Exodus, and the second one is on Shmuel, Samuel. And I should say it's on the whole thing because there's really no Shmuel, Shmuel base, right? It's all in one. The Koren Tanakh of the Land of Israel, it's a coffee table-sized book, and it gives background on the Tanakh on the time that it happened, and I will let David Arnovitz talk a little bit about what it is and what they did there. So thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure.
So start off, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your own background?
I don't come from a scholarly background at all. I had a career in high tech. I was involved in computer security and involved in early banking on the internet back when nobody thought you could spend money on the internet. And after a couple of exits, the security company was bought by HP and the banking company went public. I moved my family with our 5 children to Israel in 1999. I was doing a lot of tutoring with the kids because we kind of fell into a foreign land here when we first got here. But then I started working with different causes that I thought were important. I helped start Shalem College, did all the infrastructure for that, Israel's first liberal arts college. I helped start Our Crowd, which is an investment platform, and then got the idea with the owner of Koren to do this series. And so I've been doing that for the last 5 years.
Okay, but how, when, and why did you start this project? Obviously, like you said, you got together with the head of Koren, but that's not, there has to be more to the story about why this specific project and why you decided to be involved in something like this.
I've always had a love of Eretz Yisrael. When I first came here, I took the tour guide class. And basically, to run a project of this scope, you need very severe management skills in order to pull the whole thing together and run it and produce it into a book form. And also have a love of the Tanakh and a love of all the different kind of aspects of study that go around the Tanakh. And that's been a hobby of mine from the very beginning. So kind of taking the religious piece, the love of Torah, the management piece, and the organizational and study piece, it just was a nice combination of everything I've done in my life up to now.
So let's start. Tell the listeners, obviously, I'll include the link in the show's description, and people should check it out. You have to check out the pictures. We can't do it justice, without the visual, but try to attempt to explain what it exactly is, covering both volumes, what they are, what they do, and what they're attempting, explain a little bit actually what's inside of them.
The Koren Tanakh of the Land of Israel is basically a National Geographic Tanakh. It takes the different disciplines that help you understand what's going on in the Tanakh, in the text, from the standpoint of the time that it happened. In the last 200 years, there's been a tremendous amount of scholarship done in archaeology and Near East studies in ancient Egypt and the plants and animals of the time that basically all our Parshanim didn't have access to. I can't come up to Rashi's ankles when it comes to Parshanut of the Torah and explaining what's going on from our standpoint, from a religious Chazal standpoint. But I do know a lot more about how, for example, Parshat Mishpatim was a revolution over the ancient Near East law collections of the time, like Hammurabi. I can understand how the plagues attacked the beliefs of ancient Egypt because I understand what was going on in Egypt at the time Yetziat Mitzrayim would have happened in. So to understand all of these different aspects of the Tanakh through the eyes of somebody who was living at the time gives you an understanding of the Tanakh that's completely different than what you get from traditional study. People that open this book and read it that have been studying Tanakh all their lives, doing Parshat Shavua, and even people in advanced positions in scholarship, in Bible scholarship, they don't have access to this information, and it helps you understand what's going on and understand what an amazing revolution the Tanakh is against what was going on at the time.
And given also in the beginning, I should say you do include a date timing, I guess would be the right, maybe a timeline.
Timeline, correct.
Timeline, not dating. We'll get to that in a second. Maps and other things. And inside, I guess I'll explain. There's a few different sections on each page. Obviously, there's an archaeology section, Near East, language, flora and fauna, Egyptology, Mishkan, geography, halacha, and I'll let you talk more in depth. But one thing I think we should mention is that, I mean, as you say in here, it is a from thing. You're not discussing authorship or other kind of biblical criticism. That's not something that's coming to play here. Is that right?
Koren is an Orthodox publishing house. So there is a very straight line that we have to toe. We're trying to get as close as possible to that line because there's a way to understand the Tanakh that is consistent with our belief system as Orthodox Jews, but that can understand the scholarship and how it deepens our understanding of the text that we've been learning our entire lives. And there are certain, we don't deal at all with who wrote it, when it was written, how many authors there were. It is a unified text. We say that it was the Torah was given to Moshe at Sinai. We obviously have a lot more leeway when it comes to the Tanakh because even the Talmud says that it's been edited and the different books were written at different times. But you can gain a tremendous academic understanding of the Tanakh with modern scholarship and keep your kippah on. And it's not an inconsistency.
Right, absolutely. I just wanted to clarify that for the listeners. And I mean, there've been, different, Hoffman comes to mind. I mean, going back to Parshanim in the past 100 years, 250 years, whatever, there's been various different ones that do incorporate different things at different times. We'll just leave that for a different time. Okay, so I mean, how kind of did you? I mean, you kind of explained it, but a little bit more. How kind of did you do that? You incorporate this modern scholarship, but yet you leaving it from. So do you touch on Chazal in here, or is it not attempting to do that? It's just supposed to be the historical aspect of things.
We go in and we go through the entire text of the book, and we go through a few major sources, academic sources. Anything that has to do with documentary hypothesis, who wrote it, whatever, we just throw that all away. And we pick out topics that are going to help understand the text and the background of the text. Anytime we even touch Parshanut, we don't do it. It's just not the purpose of the book. So, and let's just, as an example, in Shmuel it says, Ein charash b'Yisrael. There's no forge, there's no smith in Israel. In the time that the Shmuel was happening, you were transitioning from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. So when it says smith, is it a bronze? Or is it an iron that they're talking about? And is it because we don't have the technology, or do the Philistines not allow us to use it? So we can go and look at archaeology at the Philistine sites. There's been a ton of archaeology done in Philistine sites in Israel, and down towards Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron. We know where all those places are. And we understand that there was iron and bronze in the Philistine sites and the Israelite sites. And so that can understand that it's probably the fact that the Philistines were stronger. They didn't allow the Israelites to do forging of metals because they didn't want them to get weapons. And so they made them come down and get it. Well, that I understand from archaeology. But when you look at it, you say, "En charash b'Yisrael," you don't know what that means when it comes to, Rashi wouldn't know what it meant. So that kind of insight helps you understand what's going on in the text, because we know from scholarship the meaning of words, the meaning of concepts, and the meaning of what was going on at the time around us.
So let me ask you about kind of a little bit about each section that you have. And I mean, I again, it's hard to do this without the visual, but just kind of each page, there are introductions to various sections. Maybe we'll speak about that in a minute. But there's the text with the translation. Then there are various different sections. They're very neatly defined by lines, I guess. Again, it's hard to explain, but there's a lot of pictures, historical pictures. There are more modern pictures, which I'll discuss, and another kind of thing. So I'll put two sections as one. The ones I guess you've kind of been alluding to, which is archaeology and Near East. I'll just lump them together for this question's purpose. I mean, what do those sections try to do? What are they setting out to accomplish?
Well, living in Israel at this time is a tremendous chut. Even today, in the Times of Israel and the Jerusalem Post, they found an inscription in a site in the northern Negev that says Yeruba'al in it. And it's from the time of the Shoftim. And that was Gidon's name. Stuff comes out of the ground all the time here, on a day-to-day basis that helps us understand the Tanakh. Was there writing back in the time of the Shoftim? I mean, obviously there was, because Moshe received the Torah. But there's a lot of scholars that say, no, there was no writing. Well, the writing came out of the ground from that time. and we have a name that matches the name in the Bible. Another great example is we were doing in Shemot in the back, it's talking about the machatzita shekel, the half shekel contribution. And it says, Beka lagul golet. So I said, wow, I bet there's some archaeology about Beka. And so I looked around, nothing. I couldn't find anything about Beka. I was getting ready to close the articles for the book because at some point you have to go to press. And I look in the Times of Israel that day, and it said, there was an article that said they found a weight in the city of David that had the word Beka on the weight in ancient Hebrew from the First Temple period. I mean, it's literally it's the Tanakh jumping out of the ground. So you can understand a lot more about the Tanakh from an archaeological standpoint because you can really validate what's happening based on what you find in archaeology and learn a lot more about the peoples, the countries, what the surrounding areas from that. And then all the Near East inscriptions that we have that have been dug up from Iraq, Iran, from Lebanon, Syria, and that have been translated a lot from the British Museum, they help us understand what the sacrifices were like in the other cultures, what the laws were like in the other cultures, what the armies are like in the other cultures. You can relate those to the Tanakh concepts and understand the setting of the Tanakh with respect to the other peoples that were living at the time that the Tanakh would have happened. So that's really gives you a greater understanding of what's happening, not from a parshan aspect, but from a cultural aspect and from a religious aspect, from a political aspect, and it really deepens your understanding of what's going on in the text.
There's one more section as well that's similar, is the Egyptology section. Is that kind of similar to these two as well?
Yeah, Egypt was kind of a world unto itself. It was really the empire that lasted the longest. So we split off Egypt from Near East, which is Assyria, Ashur, Bavel, Babylonia, Paras, Persia, which is Iran today, and the Hittites. So Egypt is such a large thing. We had a special expertise just for that. Shemot, obviously, the first third of the book was all about Egyptology. Almost every article is about Egyptology. If you understand the plagues from an aspect of what Egypt lived and believed, I'll give you an example. The plague of darkness is the 9th plague. So it must have been really serious. Right before they killed the firstborn, they had darkness. But you think about it, so what? It was dark. Nobody got killed. It was dark. And so, but if you look at the Egyptian religion of the New Kingdom, which is where Yetziat Mitzrayim would have been, they believed that the sun god went into the netherworld at Shkia, at nightfall every night, struggled with the demons in the underworld, and came out, and that caused the sun to rise. You mess that up, you've messed up everything about their religion. Pharaoh, his job was to serve the gods and keep cosmic order. The Nile had to flood every year. The people had to stay slaves that were slaves. The people that were aristocrats stayed aristocrats. The economy had to run. If you mess up their gods and their mythology, you've destroyed the gods and you've destroyed Pharaoh. And so it was the last killer thing that God created judgment. It says God executed judgment on the gods of Egypt. Well, that's how he did it. This is exactly going against their belief system. And that's why they did it. That's why God did it last, because it was the one thing that really put them down completely. But you wouldn't know that unless you understood the Egyptian piece of it. And that's all explained in the beginning of the Shemot book.
Okay. Language, I'll turn to the next one. What is language exactly?
There are a lot of words in the Tanakh that we're really not sure what they mean. We have tradition, what they mean. But a lot of times there'll be a word that only appears once in the Tanakh. The most famous example is Tzinor. David attacked the city of Jerusalem through the Tzinor. Everybody thinks it's a shaft, and they thought it was a certain archaeological thing that then they found out that it couldn't have been because that wasn't a shaft at the time. We explain all that in the book. But there are a lot of words that are used in the Tanakh that have what they call a cognate, which is pretty much the same word in another language. And because we have examples of literature from the other languages, it helps us understand what the Tanakh means. And so we can get a deeper understanding of some of the verbiage, some of the vocabulary that the Tanakh uses, because we understand what the same word means in the other languages.
Okay, another one that I think is pretty cool and pretty interesting is your flora and fauna, which I'll let you explain what that is.
So there's a lot of plants in the Tanakh, and there's a lot of animals that are mentioned. We come out and we have to eat the leeks and the melons and the pickles in Egypt, and they talk, and especially in Tehillim, there's a lot of references and metaphors to different animals. And if you understand what they're talking about, and you understand what the animal means, like for example, a tanin. What's a tanin? It could be a crocodile. It could be a snake. And so we try and show all the different pieces of the vocabulary of the animals and plants to help you visualize what's going on when they mention a certain animal.
Right. Then I'll just lump together the last few so you can just go through them. You have Mishkan, geography, and halacha. What do you discuss in those different sections?
Okay, so I'll do geography differently because that's a broader topic. We know where places are now that Rashi didn't. If you look at Rashi's map that he has in one of his commentaries, Egypt is to the south of Israel. We know now, you look at the map, Egypt is to the southwest of Israel. It's not to the south. We understand where the Galil is. We understand why the Plishtim would have come up a certain way to attack David. Everybody's been to Yerushalayim and they know the street Emek Rephaim. Well, there was a battle. The Plishtim saw that David became the king. They came up Emek Rephaim and they attacked it. That's where the old train used to go because that's the approach to Jerusalem. We understand where things are on the other side of the Jordan. We understand where the trade routes went from Egypt up through Israel, across from Megiddo to Beit Shan, and then up to Damascus, and then over to Mesopotamia. All that, and then where specific cities are, because we know from archaeology where they are. So that the geography piece is really important, both from locating the places, knowing where the roads went, knowing what the terrain looked like, and understanding why things would happen the way they did, because that's the way the easiest way to go attack things. The other one, the Mishkan, is because it's such a separate category, comparing the structure of the Mishkan to ancient Near East temples and understanding why it was based on what they knew, but it was different because it was one God and he was an invisible God, and we had a sacrificial system that was a completely different concept. But to understand it against that background, that's the Mishkan category. The halacha category we just put in there because a lot of people that read the book are not religious Jews, and so they understand or they're very lightly connected. So we throw in, that's where Kiddush comes from. That's where Rosh Chodesh comes from. We put a little article here and there just as a little spice. It's not really the focus of the book, but it's just interesting.
Gotcha. Now on every page, like I mentioned, there are numerous color photographs. It's a coffee table size book, glossy paper, and there are really cool either photographs of inscriptions or other historical things, data, so to speak. But there are some modern pictures of current cities in Israel or other things. Okay, that's understandable. But there are a lot of paintings, classical paintings by classical artists. Is that something? Obviously, that's not historical. Is that something in there just to give it some sort of a feel of what was going on? Why did you decide to include those?
Look, I think across the board, the Tanakh doesn't get enough play in the Jewish world, left, right, and sideways. And what we're trying to do is draw people into the text. When you buy a Koren Talmud, you're pretty much studying Daf Yomi. You're looking at the middle part where you've got the interpolated text. You look on the outside for fun to see something that'll spice it up a little bit, but you're basically just reading through the middle part. So it's an inside out reading. Ours is completely different. Ours is you're flipping through, you're looking at the pictures as you would look through a coffee table book, and you're being enticed to be drawn into the Tanakh through the visual images and through the design of the book, which we had a really fantastic designer, I think, that laid out the whole way the book looks. And so your eye gets tired. So we put we call it eye candy in the book to just give your eye a rest, or to say, I know that picture. What's that got to do with anything? Moshe breaking the tablets by Rembrandt. So some of the famous stuff, we put it in there because it's not really anything that's this from the ancient Near East that we can put in, but we need a picture, or we have a blank page and we just want to put something there that's nice to let your eye enjoy something colorful and not just a blank page. So it's really a design concept.
Now, let me add something for design that I think is really, I think is good and very cool. They did a good job on, is that and for each page, like I said, there's like lines on each side, and I don't know if I'm defining this properly, but it's so when on the various commentary. But I'm looking at one page here, for example, Near East and flora and fauna. It doesn't just tell you it; it actually has Near East is in red, and the flora and fauna is in green, and then it actually has there's like a specific logo that you have for each one. So it kind of jumps out at you what the section is, rather than, there's many books that they just, even like this, they write like a small header. So it takes you a minute or two to just, okay, which section am I looking at? So I think that's really nice the way you designed it. It's right away, it jumps out at you. That's the Near East section. That's the archaeology section. That's the geography. Each one has its logo and its color. In every column, on every page, if there's a new column, you did that again and again and again.
Right, because it helps categorize it, because if somebody's interested in only one of the categories, it's easy visually to understand it. And the lines that you talked about is called the grid. And the grid is familiar because you've turned the page and you know what to expect. And so there's space between. It's a whole different concept. I'm way too old for a modern design. I went to a much younger guy to lay the book out and to do the design. And I think that he was very successful in making it look completely different than any Tanakh that you've picked up before. And also it's incredibly visually pleasing to go through. It's a great experience to flip through the book.
Now, interestingly, you let me ask you a little bit on the order here. You did Shemais, and then you went to Shmuel. One thing interesting is that Shemais, maybe it has, I guess, I don't know if I'm going to say this. You can tell me I'm wrong, because I'm not. But like, at least the Chumash has the most archaeological things to work with. Not archaeology, but history, Egyptology, etc. But interestingly, you called it the Koren Tanakh of the land of Israel, but Shemais actually doesn't take place in the land of Israel. It's the first step on the journey, I guess, but it takes place mainly in Mitzrayim and then the Midbar. Why did you do Shemais first and then you jumped to Shmuel? So you left Chumash, you went to Tanakh. What's the structure here?
So there's two reasons. One is the Orthodox aspect of it, and one is the donor aspect of it. The Orthodox aspect, Breshit, is just very complicated. And I didn't want to break my hashkafic teeth on Breshit. It's first of all, it's a much bigger book than Shemot, and second of all, there's so many issues that happened so much before most of recorded history. The stuff that happened in there, we just did not want to deal with the concepts that we'd have to deal with as an Orthodox academic book about the Tanakh with Breshit. Now we've pretty much hit our stride. We understand it. So we did Shemot first, which has archaeology in it, believe it or not. The only time that the Egyptians built with bricks was the time that we would have been in Egypt. The pyramids were built out of stone. The Egyptians almost always built out of stone, which lasts longer. But at the time that we were there, we have archaeological evidence they built with bricks and straw, and they had quotas. We have archaeological evidence of all that stuff, and it's only when we would have been there in the New Kingdom time. But the academic scholarship of Shemot is very fascinating. The Egypt stuff at the beginning, Parshat Mishpatim with all the laws, and then the Mishkan and temple stuff in the back, just as a broad overview. It's fascinating from an academic standpoint. We have to do the whole Tanakh. It's a Tanakh. But yes, you did catch me on that. It did not happen in the land of Israel. But that's the reason. Shmuel was partially a donor concept. Roger Hertog, who's a very philanthropic man from New York, who's very involved with the Tikva Fund and all kinds of fantastic Jewish causes, that is very interested in archaeology and specifically the city of David. And so since David conquered the city of Jerusalem in Shmuel, and we have archaeology around that time period, he preferred that we do that as the first Navi book that we did.
I will point out, you do mention that you did Shmuel as one volume, not Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Beis, because I believe that's a later invention.
Well, we're trying to do that whole Tanakh, not in 24 books. We're going to do it in 13 volumes altogether. And a lot of the later ones will be based on the civilization that we were under the thumb of at the time. We'll have an Assyrian volume, a Babylonian volume, we'll have a Persian volume, and the books that are associated with that time period will be in that volume. So this is part of the plan, is to not do so many volumes for the set, but traditionally Christians split Shmuel into two. We didn't do it. So we went back to the traditional way we view Shmuel, which is just one Shmuel.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say, is that people may think you'd be familiar today, Shmuel Aleph, Shmuel Beis, but that's not really the case. Something else that I want to ask you, I alluded to this earlier, I almost forgot about it, is that you have introductions during various sections. To start Shemais, Introduction to Ancient Egypt, and it's essentially like an essay. And there's other ones. I don't know if there's another one you want to talk about and why you did that, and they're very helpful. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit?
Well, there's certain things you just can't cover in an article. First of all, everybody today is ADD because of the internet. And so you can't write anything long. You can't do a long essay. People won't read it. So the longest essay we do is a double page spread, 1,000 words. But there are certain concepts like Egypt, like the concept of cosmic order, like who are the Philistines for Shmuel, that you have to give an introduction so you can give the details in the individual articles about that go through the text later on. So we have what we call a section introduction that's double page. It has some pictures in it, so it looks visually nice, and it explains that concept that then pieces of which are taken up in the articles that follow it. We have 5, 6, 7 per book of those kind of articles. Now,
Shmuel is just simply one is Chumash, but there's obviously many other differences. And did the work on Shmuel different anyway from Shemais, or same overall structure, same overall kind of work?
We have to hire scholars that are relevant to each book based on the material in the book. So I had the former curator of Egypt archaeology from the Israel Museum write all of our Egyptology articles. She wrote maybe 2 or 3 in Shmuel. I had the main archaeologist that digs Philistine things write about the Philistines for Shmuel. He didn't have anything to do with Shemot. So basically, when you go into a book, you make your list of topics, you figure out the subtopics of expertise that you need, and you'll go after those scholars. If you look at the beginning, there's a contributor list at the beginning of Shemot, and then at the beginning of Shmuel. It's almost completely different. And there's certain people that are like the language guy. He's going to be the same guy for all of them because he understands all the different languages in the area. But I had to hire many different people for Shmuel than I did for Shemot. And now I'm working on Vayikra Bamidbar. I have a whole different group. I've got a lot more people that have to do with the Hittites, which is the most interesting sacrificial system we have that we can compare to what's going on in Vayikra.
Now, do you have any other examples that you want to give from any part of the book? Let's say Shemais, because that's not Shemais. Sorry, I meant Shmuel. Shmuel, because that's the new one. So maybe we should talk a little bit about the new one. Do you have anything in there that you want to, or I mean, it could just be Shemais also. Any other examples that you want to?
Just look, as a believing Jew, you always get attacked. This didn't happen. That didn't happen. And what we're finding is the more things that are found in scholarship, we're validating a lot more of the things that were in doubt before. So, for example, for a long time, the scholars said there was no such thing as David HaMelech. He didn't exist. We don't have any evidence of David HaMelech. And he's like King Arthur. We don't have any archaeological evidence from the city of David at the time, from the time of King David. We don't have any outside validation that there's a King David. There's no way. It's the way they say it in archaeology land. They say absence of evidence is evidence of absence. And so then all of a sudden, somebody found an inscription that says Beit David on it. And so now we have outside evidence that there was a dynasty based on the house of David that existed. And they said, okay, well, there was no David because there's no archaeology from the time. The city of David is completely wiped clean every time you build. It's not a tell like Megiddo or Lachish or any of these places that go layer after layer after layer. The sides are so steep, they would have to sweep the whole thing off and then build on top of it. So anything underneath is pretty much not there. There was no evidence. So they found this place in 2007 called the Khirbet Kiafa, which is in the Elah Valley, right near where David and Goliath, the battle happened. And they found a fortress from the time of King David. And it makes perfect sense that there would be a fortress there because that was the border. The border was where David fought Goliath, overlooking that valley that you can go to today. You can go to the Nachal and pick up the smooth stones that it said he put in the sling to kill Goliath. It's right there. And so they have evidence of a fortress from that time that makes sense that a monarch in Jerusalem would have built a fortress from that time. It completely debunked a lot of the theories that there was no evidence that they're there. I mean, they're still arguing about it, of course. But because we keep finding things, and the archaeology world in Israel is so dynamic that we completely change the way we look at things because we're finding evidence, like this thing that came out of the ground today. Every day almost that something comes out in the papers that have something to do with the Tanakh, which is very exciting.
Now, I know you mentioned there's different contributors in each volume. I mean, what is your job as editor-in-chief? Do you do any writing, or is your job, like you said, making sure the project runs and getting the different contributors? What exactly does your job entail?
So I'm what we call in Israel a kol boinik. I am a jack of all trades. The main thing is the management, but I have to figure out what the topics are, make a list, follow each article as it goes through my review, academic review, editing, proofreading, consistency checking. There's a whole big workflow that has to be managed that I do. Also, there's the hashkafic issue. I've got to draw the line and say, we can say that, we can't say that. This is relevant to the book. This is partial. We're not going to go there. So that's a big piece of it. But also technically, it's just how do you do the index? How do you do the bibliography? There's a big, long bibliography. We quote all our sources. Every article has sources, and we have to make that all happen. The index, the figuring out that you have rights to every image in there, and pay for the ones that we have to pay for, and find the high resolution versions of the images. It's a very complex undertaking, but you do get better at it. The first book took 2.5 years, and the second book took a little bit more than a year. I'm hoping to get one a year out. See if I can make it that fast. But once the machine starts running, we understand. Also, we can reuse a lot of the scholars from book to book. And also, now that we have 2 books and I can actually give somebody, and they can hold it in their hand and see what it is, then they're much more willing to work with me because they see that it's a worthwhile project.
And one more mention about the hashkafic aspect. You said the rabbinic advisor, I think, is Rabbi Dr. Tzvi Hirsch Weinrib, right?
Well, he's the overall Koren posek, and we go to him with the big ones. He's the Moshe Rabbeinu of Koren. The one I work with day to day is named Jeremiah Unterman, who was a former educator, has a PhD in ancient Near East and the Bible, and he's written a book on how the Bible's ethics compared to the ancient Near East ethics, and he's completely hashkafically in line with where we want to be, with a very deep background both in Bible scholarship and with the ancient Near East, and so he's the one that keeps me honest.
Now, I mean, as we end up over here, as we finish up, what does this chumash, I call it chumash or nach, whatever, the Tanakh, what does it offer to someone, right? Why someone want a standard learning kind of thing? I mean, why is it useful? Obviously, it's meant for different kind of peoples, like you said, it's just meant for Jews overall. But I mean, why is it someone wants to pick up a Tanakh? What is this? What is useful, especially about this?
I think this is an aspect of the Tanakh that you just don't know. People that have studied Mikra Gedolot, people that have gone through Tanakh, whether they do the Gush, the traditional commentators, with the little Gemara pieces that talk about the different psukim in the Tanakh, this opens up the Tanakh with an understanding that I think kind of breaks you out of the traditional learning mold, but in a consistent way with your belief system. It gives you an understanding, what is the Tanakh really saying? And also it really gives you an appreciation of how revolutionary it was and how much of a change it was. The whole notion of slavery that was going on at the time versus 6 years you should work for and then the 7th year you should go free. That changed the concept of the value of an individual. That was the very beginning of all men are created equal. And you don't really understand how revolutionary it was unless you understand what it was going up against. It was going up against empires. It was going up against feudalism. It was going up against monarchs. It was going up slavery. It was, if you understand what was going on at the time, you get such a better feeling for what God gave us as a nachala with the Tanakh.
And finally, I think you alluded to this earlier. I mean, what's the next volume in the series? And like you said, you're hoping to get one a year, right?
Yeah, so I'm working on Vayikra Bamidbar now, which is that'll be one volume, both books in one. And after that, I think it's going to be Yirmiyahu and Eicha and the other books around the destruction. But we also have a funder for Breshit, so we may finally just go ahead and buckle up and try and attack Breshit next. I think that I'm scheduling to go to print towards the end of the year for Bamidbar at the beginning of next year. It'll come out sometime in 2022, and then we'll see after that.
Just to mention, Yirmiyahu, Eicha, you mean do them separately, or you would put them together?
No, put them together. Yirmiyahu, Eicha, and the prophets around the destruction.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Bye.